This new scheme has been in preparation for about 2.5 years, following piloting in 4 force areas throughout 2008 and 2009, which showed that on numerous occasions the police and other agencies were able to take active steps to protect children, which they would not have been able to do had the scheme not been in existence. Essentially, the difference now is that members of the public can raise concerns direct with the police service, either by calling in at a police station, by telephoning, possibly over the internet, by speaking to an officer or a CSO in the street, and raise concerns that they may have regarding an adult or adults known to them who have unrestricted access to children. In the past, there's always been scope for people to raise concerns like that to the police service, but in fairness, in previous years, I think many people would have been told really that for data protection reasons and other reasons we couldn't really disclose information to members of the public. But the difference with this scheme is that anybody who makes an inquiry will be empowered to go into the police station or contact the police, confident in the knowledge that we will take seriously the concerns they raise and will take action if there is anything known to us in the background of the person being inquired about. We will disclose under carefully controlled conditions relevant information to the people best placed to protect the children, and the pilot scheme showed that in excess of 60 children were protected and steps were taken that would not have been possible otherwise in those 4 force areas. So in reality that means that several hundred people throughout the country, and particularly in Shropshire, will be protected through this new scheme when it comes into being today.
People, when they're given information, they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to pass it on.
That's right.
The fear was
right.
originally, I believe, about vigilantes.
That's right.
And I just wonder if you could explain that as well, please.
One of the particularly good aspects of this scheme is that it was piloted for over 12 months in 4 force areas, which allowed us to test out some of our concerns and the concerns of other people about how such a scheme would operate in practice. There were concerns, for example, that we might be overrun with enquiries. There were concerns that people, having had information and very personal information disclosed to them, might possibly pass that on to other people, and that could lead to vigilante type attacks. There were also concerns that misunderstanding of the scheme might lead to registered sexual offenders whose whereabouts are currently known to the police service and to the other relevant agencies possibly disappearing because they were concerned that this was going to lead to instances of vigilantism and that sort of exposure. The good news is that throughout the pilots each of these concerns were tested very carefully, and there was absolutely no evidence came forward to suggest that any of these things had happened in the pilots. Indeed, people who are given disclosure are asked to sign a confidentiality agreement which commits them to understanding that the information being released is purely for the purpose that we're giving it to them. In other words, for them to be able to take active steps to safeguard the children. There have been no instances in the pilot schemes of that trust and the confidentiality agreement being breached. That's not to say it won't happen, and I'm not so naive as to think that at some point we'll be tested on that. But there's clear potential for people to be prosecuted if inappropriate personal information is passed on to people who have no direct need to be aware of that. Having overseen the development of this scheme for the last 2.5 years from here in West Mercia and seeing how the pilots worked in the 4 force areas, I'm delighted that we're now involved ourselves in the first phase of additional rollout, so that 20 more forces will be going live with the scheme between now and October, with the remaining 19 forces going live prior to next April. It's been a great example of West Mercia Police leading the way in a crucially important project which will undoubtedly safeguard children in the future. Some people thought we might be inundated. It hasn't, and there were only 2 examples in the pilot that were identified of sort of inappropriate access, people just being nosy, or possibly journalists or somebody trying to expose somebody. There are a couple of examples, but they were very quickly identified. So no, I mean, again, you know, no doubt it'll happen one day, but it hasn't so far. It's not been what you'd expect actually. You sort of would have guessed it was probably going to be mainly single mums with a new partner or something. The biggest group actually was estranged fathers, which when you think about it is not surprising, raising concerns about ex-wife's new partner and the safety of the children. But we had some sort of unusual ones. We had one particular one where the mum, I think, was a single mum, but her mother, in other words, the grandmother of the children, she got a new boyfriend. So it was the mother of the children expressing concerns about her mother's new boyfriend. The reverse of what you'd probably expect. So there's a whole range, really, and it, you know, it's so far it's worked well. It's been quite proportionate. It hasn't sort of got out of hand, but that's been one of the benefits of the pilot.